Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those of you who are joining us from earlier time zones. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Danica Blacklock, and I am the head of the Knowledge, Performance and Learning team for the Australian-Indonesian Partnership for Disaster Risk Management, also known as the SIAP SIAGA program. We're very pleased to have the opportunity to share with you the experiences of the SIAP SIAGA team in designing, implementing, and adapting a monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework for a systems change program. And because we like a challenge, this is a systems change program which uses an adaptive approach, so our MEL framework is adaptive as well. Today we have with us colleagues and partners to share with you our journey in adaptive monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and to provide some insight into some of the experiences we have had implementing adaptive approaches and tools. Before I begin, I would like to hand over to Sarah Stein, the First Secretary at the Australian Embassy in Jakarta, to provide some opening remarks. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Danica, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone online wherever you are. On behalf of the Australian Government, I would like to welcome you to this session where our colleagues from the Australia-Indonesia Partnership for Disaster Risk Management, or the SIAP SIAGA program, will share their experiences in designing and implementing an adaptive MEL framework. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Bapak Budrek, Director of Risk, Disaster Mapping and Evaluation from the National Agency of Disaster Management, BNPB, for his partnership through the SIAP SIAGA program and his leadership under this program. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge Bapak Ali Yusuf, the board member from the Institution for Disaster Management and Climate Change, LPBI, from Nahdlatul Ulama as well, for his partnership and leadership in disaster risk management in Indonesia. And finally, I'd like to thank and acknowledge all the SIAP SIAGA team, including Danica, Agnoto and Bu Hazrina, for organising this event and for speaking today, and for all their work on the SIAP SIAGA program. Monitoring and evaluation are key elements of Australia's development performance framework to support a high-quality development assistance program. Australia is currently developing a new international development policy. The Australian Minister for International Development and the Pacific, Pat Conroy, highlighted in a speech that an element he would like this new international development policy to address is our approach to ensuring quality, transparency and accountability in our development program. He noted we need to develop a more rigorous, evidence-based approach so we can evaluate whether our aid is effective and build public support for the program. The Government of Australia has a long-standing partnership with the Government of Indonesia on disaster management. As neighbours and countries affected by a wide range of complex disaster risks, we have a shared interest in working together to exchange expertise and knowledge to effectively manage these risks. Since 2007, with the passing of the disaster management law following the devastating impacts of the Indian Ocean tsunami in December 2004, Australia has partnered with the Government of Indonesia and supported its efforts to strengthen policy and regulatory frameworks and institutional capacity to deliver disaster management services at all levels of society. Australia also recognises Indonesia's extensive knowledge and capacity on disaster risk management, which has come from decades of experience in disaster preparedness, response and recovery, which is reflected in the sophistication of the country's disaster management system. The SIAP SIAGA program aims to support the Government of Indonesia in the further strengthening of disaster risk management by using a systems change or systems strengthening approach that reflects the complexity and dynamic nature of the sector through an adaptive management approach. This complexity requires the development and testing of innovative approaches to planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Since the start of the program, SIAP SIAGA has tried, tested, and refined a range of approaches and tools to support systems change in the complex disaster management sector in Indonesia. I am very pleased that you have been able to join us to hear more about our experiences in adaptive monitoring, evaluation and learning, and hope that you find this session informative and relevant for your own programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We appreciate the support and the encouragement that the Australian Embassy has provided us over the last 3.5 years as we've tested these new approaches and tools. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Kanjeng Notonogoro, also known as Pat Noto, who, among other things, is a disaster risk management specialist, but also leads SIAP SIAGA's activities on real-time evaluation. Pat Noto will be representing the SIAP SIAGA MEL journey to date, after which we'll have a short panel discussion with colleagues and partners on their experiences using some of the tools which Pat Noto will be highlighting. Over to you, Pat Noto.
Thank you so much, Danica. Can I have the presentation on the screen, please? Thank you, Mas Jalal. If you can put it on full screen, yes. Start with the first presentation, first slide. Yeah, okay, thank you. The SIAP SIAGA program is a 5-year program funded by the Australian government to strengthen Indonesian management in disaster risk and engagement between Indonesia and Australia on humanitarian assistance in the Indo-Pacific region. We have two focus. First, at the domestic level on improving Indonesia's ability to prevent, prepare and respond to, as well as recover for rapid and slow onset disasters. And at the regional level, or our regional focus, the objective is to strengthen cooperation between Australia and Indonesia on regional humanitarian issues. Next slide, please. Thank you. On our approach, we have 3 approaches that we want to highlight here. First is that we partner with as many partners as possible, particularly with the government, but also civil society, academia, and other development partners. This is what the government of Indonesia has promoted as the pentahelix approach. We also implement a system change approach to strengthen policy coherence and the clarity of roles, building on the extensive results of previous investment. And lastly, we work closely and facilitate stakeholders to harness existing resources and knowledge, and also to leverage ongoing activities, programs, networks, and resources to help connect the dot across the systems. Next. Our journey so far, starting into 2020, we start with analysis of the bottleneck and in the disaster management system, consultation with GOI partners to identify priority areas, and also the planning processes. We started on the 2020, and then on 22 to 21 to 2022, we begin our implementations. Real-time evaluation, learning, and refinement of activities. And this is where our MEL tools has been implemented in collaborations with our partners. On this year, 2023, we will have very soon an assessment of intermediate outcomes and implementation of midterm review, as well as refinement of and elaborations of our program strategy or our theory of change. Next. Now, what we're going to present here is a number of principles. There are 4 principles actually, and this is based on our experience so far. And for each principle, I will try to explain what is the reality, what's the impact, and then how's our response, and what should be the strategy. The principle number 1, we identified that measurement needs to be outcome focused. It seems to be quite obvious, but that's not always the case. In reality, system programs adapt to changing priorities based on emerging results and changes in context. So the impacts, output and target can continually change. We don't adopt the principle that the output and target needs to be the same from the beginning of the program until the end of the program. I think that approach is not realistic. And then our response, we use our theory of change to deconstruct the variables of what change looks like vis-a-vis the program intended outcomes. And then we design the indicators using those variables. So as a strategy, the programs, as program implementation progress, we always reevaluate what change might look like based on the changes observed and update indicators as necessary. Next. The second principle, the measurement of tools need to accommodate reflection and inquiry. The reality is measurement tools need to be participatory, or it should be a collective responsibility. It's not just one person doing the measurement or one person being deployed to the field and then collect the data. No, it should always be a participatory process. And then the impact of that is it might take time to test out the different tools or approaches to determine what works best for the program. But we focus on what is needed most. In SIAP SIAGA case, we focus on two things, which is accountability and tracking change. And then the response, there are two approaches. First, collaborative measurement through monthly activity reports and quarterly reflection report. And then the second, we do real-time evaluations and learning. So evaluation is usually done at the mid of the program or at the end of the program. This is not what we do in SIAP SIAGA. We do real-time evaluation. So the evaluation is sort of ongoing, real-time. And then the strategy, we utilize outcomes from these tools to harvest evidence of progress toward outcomes and adapt program activities to respond to evidence and changes in priorities and context. Next. The principle number 3, this is also seems like obvious, but that's not always what we development practitioners done. Is to track emergent change. The reality is we have an idea of what may change over time based on our theory of change, but we cannot be sure as change is emergent. And then the impact is predetermined target can quickly become irrelevant and create unnecessary challenges for both program and monitoring teams. And the response, we do measurement and evaluation tools. Our measurement and evaluation tools need to be able to track emergent change, which is change that you may have predicted and change that you may not have predicted. The strategy should be adapting to both predicted and unpredicted change to ensure relevance and effectiveness and sustainability of the results. The last principles is about clear change of evidence. We're trying to promote how essential that is. The reality is the complexity of tracking system, the complexity of tracking system change, which is primarily qualitative, requires more rigors. And then the impact of this reality, stringent criteria for documenting evidence of change and clear analysis of how change contribute to program outcomes are necessary to ensure robustness of analysis as well as and credibility in the eyes of the program partner. And then in response to that reality and impact, SIAP SIAGA evidence comes in many forms. We have changes at the policy and regulations level, but we also observe of changing mindsets, which is documented in meeting minutes, for example. We also collect feedback from partners and we shift in activity based on results. We also observe requests from partner which signify increasing ownership or buy-in. When we also have evidence in the form of documentations of shift away from business as usual process, and evidence in the form of discussion between government actors, which are results of the program support. So, what have we learned about adaptive monitoring, evaluations, and learning from? Designing a monitoring, evaluations, and learning framework is a challenging task with no hard and firm rules. But we should not be afraid to try new approaches. For example, using stories as a means to communicate change. But we need to be rigorous about monitoring the results. And we also need to learn what works and what does not work, what is necessary and what is not over time. This will differ from one program to another. Secondly, we also learn that it is important to be guided by principles to design and implement adaptive monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks. So we need to work collaboratively with stakeholders to identify risks and be realistic about the results. Those are our presentations, which is results of our collective thinking. Thank you very much. Over to you back, Denika.
Thank you so much, Pak Noto, for that very helpful and very insightful information. I'd like to introduce three colleagues and partners who are going to briefly share their experiences in implementing the tools that were presented by Pak Noto. First, my colleague Hasrina Mulyawan, who is the Learning Officer for the SIAP SIAGA program. Welcome, Hasrina.
Thank you, Denika. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon on Jakarta time to the participants for our session today. Thank you for joining us today. As been introduced by Denika, I'm a learning officer from SIAP SIAGA, and then I would like to share my experiences as a learning officer during how we use this designing adaptive MEL framework for system change programs. So first of all, it's been already mentioned before by Panoto that our program is using adaptive programming, and then this one is like, we really focuses on how understanding how change happens and adapting theories of change to reflect the learning about towards the program. And then this is the thing, one of the challenging is that how that we can shift from supporting one approach to change to another, and then what changes, and it's not simply like how changing the program activities, but basically, but more into underlying logic on how to make this change happen. This is not very easy in terms of the context of Indonesia, because Indonesia has like, very with a different capacity in each provinces, and also different approach in any culture in the provinces itself. That's make it very challenging to shifting this adaptive MEL framework. And we really need to think on the how we really have to think outside the box about how to undertake the monitoring, the evaluation, and this is so it can be useful for across the wider program, including with our partners. As mentioned before, that we focuses into two, domestic and the regional one. In terms of achieving those goals, we also not only collaborated with the government stakeholders, but also we are collaborated with the community, the GSO or organization in Indonesia. Since we are particularly focused on the system change, this is sometimes that we really need to make a same understanding with the stakeholder in referring back what are the type of the evidence that's been highlighted in order to, like, in order to see what changes happen. Because many people, many stakeholders already get used to with the very rigid monitoring and evaluation, like determine what are the baseline from A to B, and then simply resulting into what have been targeted previously, and shifting that mindset, it can be really challenging. And then that's why we are trying to demonstrate our contribution to change by collaborating with the stakeholders, by capturing those things. Instead of like using traditional monitoring, we are trying to accommodate that with the real-time evaluation because we believe that these systems are more make us easier to capture in the short time what is actually can be strengthened. So we are still on the same pathways in capturing the evidence and then observing this changing. We are trying to capture the evidence from meetings, like observing changes and attitudes on or how discussions are carried out. Is not something that you can monitor in a periodic field visit, because sometimes the periodic field visit, you cannot really capture what is actually going on. Yeah. What is actually going on, but by doing a regular real-time evaluation monthly, we can really know what is actually people doing now and what are basically their challenging at the moment, and what are the possible opportunities that can be taken shortly in this period of the program. So that's the thing that give us many opportunities working directly with the government and their partners that really can change the way we think about and then how we do the monitoring. And not to mention that sometimes when we do the monitoring on the, what you call it, the traditional monitoring, we've already saying the field visit one, sometimes we cannot capture existing condition because it's only like one time condition. So therefore, in order to adjust to it, we also heavily rely on our program team colleges, yeah, to report back on the activities they implement and the observation that they have about what is changing as a result of our activities. And while we periodically check in with the government counterparts to verify some of these findings, the idea that measurement of result is now collaborative means that work with the MEL team focuses instead of on analyzing the evidence which is submitted by program colleges, but we also focus on collaboratively reviewing emerging themes. So this part can be one of the process of the iterative process among our stakeholders, the internal stakeholders and also the external stakeholders, on how we review the emerging and then how we focus on the learning and then have the same understanding what is actually working well and why we can use these learning opportunities. So where basically our approaches can be improved to sharpen or to have an alternative stakeholder engagement, for instance, because sometimes in the baseline, we've already have a pre-assumption on the determined stakeholders, but during the process, during the during the iterative process, we see that in order to achieve the goals, it's not only that the predetermined stakeholders that we should engage together, but during the process we find out that there is another stakeholder that should also need to be engaged in order to achieve the goal of the SIAP SIAGA program. So we use that, and instead of only to monitor and then evaluate how many resources that has been used, are we going to meet the deadline or not? Are we going to meet the? Are we actually working based on the timeline? But we also use this real-time evaluation as a part of the learning process to see what are the results, and then we see that we learn that by harvesting the learning from these evaluation processes, we come up with how to facilitate all of the related stakeholders in this case. For instance, in internal SIAP SIAGA, where we have in our program, we have 3 programs: national, regional, and also the subnational. It can be seen that this can be cross-cutting each other, and then that's we need to facilitate it together. And then after the internal facilitation, we can come up with how we facilitate other external stakeholder itself. So this is so far, and then one of the things that I see from as part of my experiences as the learning officer here, that we are trying to shift the idea of being a monitoring and reporting team to being an evaluation and learning team. And as I say that with our role as a part of the facilitation is not only rather do the cross-checking and also supporting program college as a strategic resources, but also to dig into project result to help them understand basically now where we are. We really know what are we really on the right track into achieving our determine goals in the theory of change, and then what is basically in the comes next in the very short time, so we can adjust thing from the very beginning during the iterative process before we come to the end result of the evaluation itself. So yeah, this mindset so far has not been instant. After working with the SIAP SIAGA for 3 years, we see that it's not that easy, to be honest, to convince our stakeholders on seeing how this adaptive programming can be really implemented towards the program, because people are already get used to the very logical framework one, determined from A to B, and then it's really hard to make them very comfort on how basically that we can go together to really dig out what are the very essential problem that we have currently had, and what are basically the most valuable opportunities that lies along the process in implementing the program together. So this is the thing that sometimes one of the challenges that we have, how to let people come out from their period of discomfort. And yeah, this is that we have been through, and then this is not how we normally do this, but perseverance definitely brings result and helps to build a sense of collective responsibility for adaptive management and MEL in the team. So I think that's so far, Danica, that I would like to share as a part of the experience in doing the designing adaptive MEL frameworks for system change programs. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hasrina, for the really detailed the sharing of your experiences. I would agree, it certainly has been a journey these past 3 years. And I'm sure our next speaker will attest to the same. Ali Yusuf has been working closely with the SIAP SIAGA program as a non-government partner with the LPBNU organization, one of the largest NGOs in Indonesia. Welcome, Pa Ali, and thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Denika. Yeah, thank you, Denika. Yeah, hello. Denika.
Yes, Pa, go ahead.
Okay, oh, it's okay, okay. Thank you, Denika. Good afternoon, everyone from Jakarta. I'm Muhammad Ali Yusuf, member of LPBNU, Nahdlatul Ulama Institution for Disaster Management and Climate Change. I would like to convey the value of participatory review and real-time evaluation in complex project. It is a reflection from a program implemented by LPBNU in collaboration with SIAP SIAGA program with funding support from the Australian government or DFID. Yeah. Yes, it is a reflection of a program implemented by LPBNU in collaboration with SIAP SIAGA program with funding support from the Australian government or DFID. Since 2006, LPBNU has been partnering with the government of Australia, and since 2020, at the time of the outbreak of COVID-19, we have collaborated with the SIAP SIAGA program. At that time, we have supported SIAP SIAGA program to trial a new approach to community-based disaster risk management, particularly regarding the collection of disaggregated data to support more inclusive disaster management. This data can also be used to support development processes, especially in village level or community level. We and the SIAP SIAGA program are also developing behavior change communication for reducing the COVID-19 risk and also disaster risk. In the highly dynamic context in which we have been implementing program, particularly in relation to testing the new approach to community-based disaster risk reduction, we have worked closely with the SIAP SIAGA team to ensure that learning is at the heart of the monitoring and evaluation process. And through the SIAP SIAGA program, we have participated in and supported the implementation of 2 participatory evaluation, which have been a valuable learning process for us to enable our program to adapt to changing program context as well as influence national policy. While implementing risk communication for behavior change program, instead of going through the traditional midterm and line evaluation process, we work closely with the SIAP SIAGA program and other partners, namely MDMC and PIT, to implement a participatory review, not only of the program result, but also approach use and, more importantly, the lesson learned from testing and from a new methodology for disaster risk reduction in Indonesia, which is driving behavior change. Unlike traditional evaluation, where we worry about whether or not we have made sufficient progress against program goal, the participatory review has allowed us to be candid about what works and what doesn't, then how the methodology tested can be adapted for different actors and different levels, and also present recommendation to policymakers at the national level. The participatory review also created more space for reflection and provided an appreciation of the work we have done than in traditional or conventional evaluation. We also participated in real-time evaluation with the SIAP SIAGA program under the FED's COVID-19 response and recovery program with the name of Recover Together. Through this initiative, together with other partners, we tested a community-based approach to economic recovery and providing support for economic resilience. Our program implementation timeframe is quite short, and the value we will get from doing traditional evaluation will be limited. And so the SIAP SIAGA program worked closely with us to implement the real-time evaluation. We had monthly meetings to assess progress, lesson learned, what was working well and what was not, and recommendation from a real-time evaluation consultant were sent back to us to help us in adjusting activities or approaches, or our scale up good practices to achieve our program targets. For partners like my organization and also some others, it was a very helpful exercise to identify challenges and keep implementation on track. It gave us more opportunities to reflect on some unexpected results. I think it's very important. For example, in our program, the impact of collecting disaggregated data to the distribution of aid package to reduce impact of COVID-19. So for distribution of aid package, we are not facing difficulty to identify and determine respective community that will be as a target beneficiaries. Yeah. So we also, by referring the data, it will be easier for us to select potential recipient of the assistance. We have developed this, and it has become a recommendation for the national government. Both participatory review process and real-time evaluation process have created opportunities for our program to adapt to the changing dynamics during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that helped us to be able to maintain our program performance to achieve our program targets. But the participatory review and the real-time evaluation have also given us bigger opportunity to share what we have learned to support improved community-based disasters management in Indonesia. I think this is all from me. Danica, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Pak Ali. And I would like to say that LPBNU has just a massive appreciation for all of your support and the patience from your team as we've worked through designing and implementing these adaptive monitoring processes. I think it's safe to say that the way we are implementing monitoring and evaluation in the SIAP SIAGA program has really helped to transform our relationship with civil societies organizations such as NU into a true partnership. Now, I'd like to introduce our last speaker. Dr. Udrak is the Director of Mapping and Evaluation at the Indonesian National Disaster Management Agency. We've worked closely with Dr. Udrak since the inception of the SIAP SIAGA program, and he was an early champion of our adaptive systems change approach. Dr. Udrak, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Danica. Yeah, I'm absolutely agree with what Hasrina mentioned. So yeah, this thing is very, for me, it's very new things, new methodology and new system of changes. Even when I meet other institution, it is not really new. So it means that maybe I just first learning from the activity together with SIAP SIAGA. But especially after GPDRR, I think a lot of information that have a good or were related with this approach, because yeah, when we learn from COVID-19, there is a lot of things that right now are running very fast. We cannot make a good planning, and we need to be agile. So something that fix is the changing itself. So so I think, yeah, this system is very interesting, but yeah, very challenging because we first it is we need to be agile and understand as soon as possible about something changing, and we need to adaptive to this changing. So when I learned first from Danica about the theory of change, and after that how we can calculate the bottleneck and how by time, we try to make some of from the monitoring and evaluation and what like river flow. So it means that we try to follow the changing itself. So what SIAP SIAGA program has introduced is very important practice, because it is also has a good relation with the concept what Pak Noto has already mentioned about the theory about the pentahelix concept that BNPB especially proposed. So it is has a participatory evaluation with the semi-annual partner reflection workshop. So the workshop itself have a new dimension to the way we think about how our development partners plan, implement, and review their projects. In Indonesia, as we know, planning is something a little bit quite difficult for us. Something we just have the information to do something. It means that planning itself cannot be or cannot be made long term. It means that we only have some times to prepare for that long term planning. So I think short term planning with the adaptive method is not in Indonesia is should be good to be implemented, but in reality, also in the world, we understand that how the world's changing very much. So SIAP SIAGA doesn't have 5-year work plans, so need to have a mechanism, the facilities in the regular, and it is we did to in-depth discussion on the result of the program. So the follow-up activities can be planned in line with the government priorities, but something maybe for us how to first, of course, every planning has an target of achievement. Let's say when we talk about standard framework for disaster risk reduction, we have that framework, and that framework has an objective that we need to achieve within 15 years. And but inside of it, of course, everything is changing. So during my meeting last week in Mumbai for a G20, but it is the work group is dedicated for a DRR. We can feel also the same thing of this problem. So I think in the future, this methodology, this system of change, maybe can every activities maybe would like also try to follow this system. The regulation workshop approach has been valuable to facilitate deeper discussion between SIAP SIAGA and its partners, and the progress of the program and key result, but also on thematic issues which emerge when the results are analyzed. For example, when reviewing results around the implementation of the minimum service standard for disaster management, key issues for discussion related to new opportunities to review and revise policies have emerged, with then result in adjustment in the SIAP SIAGA activity planning to accommodate those opportunities in line with our own priorities. But yeah, we can see that it is need more effort, of course, to do something like this. And the iterative or adaptive approach has facilitated a more participatory approach to planning, implementing, reviewing, and adapting the program. In turn, this means that our partner can relocate support in line with the anticipated result, as well as the emerging priorities and opportunities. For this, especially what I feel for the collaboration activity all over the world, SIAP SIAGA has supported a lot for international activity. We are support we was supported for GPDRR activity, PMCDRR, G20 for working group for DRR, MTR of Senator Framework. Last time also team of SIAP SIAGA supported for it. We learn a lot of things and share our idea among the countries, especially it is my impression for especially for GPDRR and just G20 for working group for DRR. That we learn from COVID-19 and also climate change that we cannot manage the disaster by business as usual. The iterative or adaptive approach is needed to overcome the systemic and cascading risks. We understand that the RR and climate change adaptation cannot be managed separately. So it is also one of the big issues that in many of the meeting working group is already mentioned. So we need to be agile, and global and regional collaboration is mandatory. And in the second meeting of working group in G20, I can feel the motto of one earth, one family, and one future. Collaboration among countries like we are doing with Australia shows mutual benefit. G20 gave Indonesia to share the problem, bottleneck, experience, and also best practice. And this experience may cause other countries in the future, because maybe Indonesia has experience for that kind of disaster, like what we also see in the Turkey for the earthquake just a couple months ago. So every country can learn from other country, and every country has their comparative advantage as part of one world, one family, and one future. It means that their advantage can be used to help other countries. Thank you very much, Denika. So it is my comment.
Thank you so much, Pat. We really appreciate that you were able to take the time to join us today and share your experiences and insights. I'd like to ask a few questions to the panelists before we wrap up our session today. First, Pak Ali, in your opinion, how much of a shift in mindset was it for your organization to view monitoring as more of a collaborative effort that focused on learning compared to sort of the traditional focus of having a monitoring officer coming out and taking a box on activities?
Yes, thank you, Denika. We think and consider that collaborative monitoring and evaluation is more meaningful for us because we will know whatever learning we got from the program we carry out, and we also got a lot of learning from other partners. We also will measure achievement of our program and show the evidence of the program achievement. We also can connect the achievement of our one output or outcome to another output or outcome, and even connecting achievement of my program to another partner. This will get us to reach our target program. In my opinion, it is very useful for us to be able to develop the program we are currently implementing to achieve our target program, and will also be as reference for the next program. Because getting learning and measuring achievement from a program is sometimes not easy. From collaborative monitoring and evaluation, we can also increase our capacity how to capture and determine learnings we get from the program implementation, and also how to measure our program achievement. So collaborative monitoring and evaluation is very useful and meaningful for us for our organization.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's really, really helpful insights. Pak Udre, back to you. Let me keep it very simple, as I'm sure this question will resonate with many of the participants here today. What benefits do you see in adaptive monitoring and evaluation for governments who are implementing development programs?
Yeah, I think Pak Ali Yusuf has already give a good explanation about the benefit. Yeah, from the government, I think it's also similar. We can feel the benefit of adaptive monitoring, because first it is also bring together the capacity, because in order to solve the problem in disaster management, especially the pentahelix need to work together, and deeping that we try to understand the program with this monitoring system is very important, because it means that first we do it because the monitoring is mostly like what very adaptive, try to understand deeply, and after that give a response also soon after we understand. So it means that everything's not we doesn't need to wait for a long until something that far from what we would like to have, and so the adaptive system can drive us to a better way as soon as possible. Yeah, but of course, again, it is not easy, and I think also need to have technological support, and also the dedicated people. It is very difficult, right? About the dedicated people, but at least we learn from this our activity that it is something that we need to have in the future. From now, learn from now, and try to do it more in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pat. You raise a really good point. I mean, one thing that we've learned actually is the adaptive approach just really increases the efficiency of the program, actually, because we are quick to identify activities that aren't working or potentially out of line with priorities, and we can halt those and redirect resources to where progress is more effective, or to realign with the priorities of the particular stakeholders, in this case, the government of Indonesia, in many other cases with specific communities, and therefore, the likelihood of sustainability and longer term impact is significantly higher. Pat Noto, finally, back to you. You have extensive experience both in the disaster management as well as performance management space. What value do you see in shifting towards systems-focused MEL, and particularly in the sort of complex sector that is disaster management?
Thank you, Danica. Well, I work in a lot of development projects. Not all of them are disaster risk management, but I think if anything, the adaptive monitoring, evaluation, and learning, it should be applied in disaster management projects, because disaster management is all about adaptations, how we adapt to shocks, for example. And then therefore our program needs to be adaptive, and for that program to be adaptive, our monitoring and evaluation framework needs also be adaptive. So I think it's a non-negotiable point. I think that's speaks for itself why we need to implement this adaptive monitoring and evaluations framework in disaster management. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, one of the sort of technical takeaways that we've had has been the fact that even over the course of the 3.5 years that we've been implementing, we've moved from solely a disaster management focused program to including COVID-19 as a national disaster. So that, that was a shift as well. And Pak Udrek can remember as well back to the days when we were trying to figure out, how does COVID-19 and disaster management, how does it fit together, and what do we do here? And then, as climate change has sort of accelerated, particularly in this region, and the impacts have been felt substantially. Again, just looking at the complexity and the capacity of the program to be adaptive and shift and accommodate these sort of changing priorities, and the shift not even just changing priorities, the priorities themselves are adapting. And so having a monitoring framework which can adapt along with the changes and in activities has been, I think, a very valuable asset. We're not sort of sitting around trying to figure out, okay, goodness, the outputs have changed and the targets have changed. So what do we do with all the information that we had from before? And so we've got these tools in place that allow us to take the results that we've gathered to date, and even if priorities shift and activities need to change, everything still continues to contribute at the outcome level and the change we want to see there. And that's it, basically. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today. I hope that the experiences and the lessons that we've shared have been both interesting and helpful to you. Of course, we also are still learning about what works and what doesn't. This is for us, for the SIAP SIAGA program. And just to reiterate what Pak Nunta mentioned, and Hasrina as well, what works and what doesn't for the SIAP SIAGA program is not necessarily what will work and what will not for other programs as well. And that is also to say what's important to measure and what's not important to measure, again, shifts from program to program. I'd like to again thank all of our colleagues and partners who joined us today. And finally, a massive thank you to the entire SIAP SIAGA team, both past and present, who've been patient and had faith that trying something new could be as rewarding as it has been challenging. Thank you again, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for Indonesian people. Have a long holiday.
Thank you.